fireside chat around sustainable manufacturing, the path to net zero. My name is David McCormack, and I'm the Director of Sustainable Manufacturing at Irish Manufacturing Research. Our discussion today will look to give you some insights on what companies are doing in relation to sustainability, some of the challenges, and what's required for this transition to net zero. To help me with this discussion, I'm delighted to be joined by Andrea Cawley, Commercial Director at Automatic Plastics. Automatic Plastics are a custom injection molder for the pharma, medtech, and food packaging sector, based in Wicklow since 1972 and employ approximately 120 staff. They have commenced their sustainability journey in earnest since 2016. I'm also joined by Austin Geraghty, Global Health, Safety and Sustainability Senior Director in Hovione. Hovione, a private-owned Portuguese company founded in 1959, dedicated to innovating and maintaining an international leading position in the field of pharmaceutical chemistry. It has 5 manufacturing sites globally, located in Portugal, China, United States, and here in Ireland, based in Cork since 2009. And finally, I'm joined by Gary McCarthy, Director of Sales, Operations, and Customer Service at Wisetek. Wisetek are leaders in manufacturing, data sanitization, reuse, and IT deposition services worldwide. Their mission is to provide world-class IT services, delivering global excellence in sustainability, security, and compliance. So welcome, Andrea, Austin, and Gary.
Thanks, Chair.
Okay, so let's get started. Austin, I'm going to come to you first. Hovione operates in the pharmaceutical sector, which has experienced significant growth in recent years. And as of the end of 2020, the total global pharmaceutical market was valued at $1.27 trillion US. Given this growth, how can this sector contribute to long-term sustainability in a significant and meaningful way?
Well, I think the first thing to say really is that the pharma industry is a very important industry and will continue to be a very important industry as we go forward. I think the medicines we make play a very important societal role in terms of maintaining people's health and the health of livestock, etc. But in terms of where we can improve our sustainability on our sustainability journey, I think that there's quite a number of improvements that we can make. I think one of those obviously is pharmaceuticals in the environment. I think this is an area of societal concern. I think there is an onus on us as an industry to design better medicines, not just in terms of efficacy, but in terms of their environmental impact. I think equally, probably a more obvious area for many people would be waste and waste minimization. As an industry, we do produce a lot of waste, both hazardous and non-hazardous. And I think there's a continued onus on us as an industry to minimize, obviously, our production of waste, but also perhaps to maximize our participation in the circular economy. This clearly will obviously benefit the bottom line for most companies, but will also reduce our environmental impact. I think a related concern is perhaps resource consumption. So again, as an industry, I think we obviously consume a lot of hazardous substances for a start, but also water and energy. We're an energy intensive industry. So I think there's an ongoing onus on us to be more efficient in the way we work and operate. And probably one of the most topical issues at the moment is the whole area of supply chain, particularly, I guess, with respect to the response of the industry to the global pandemic. So I do think there is an onus on us to strike a better balance, really, between cheaper raw materials that we ship from halfway around the world and our overall carbon footprint. I think there's an awful lot of companies, I'm aware of a lot of companies who are really taking a deep look at their carbon footprint, in particularly in relation to transportation. And I know a number of logistic companies which are responding to that and looking to support changes in that area. So there is good work being done, but I think there's really a long way to go. I think for people who are interested, they may be aware that the Sustainability Accounting Standards Board has developed materiality maps for a lot of industries, including pharma, which highlights certain areas that we need to focus on. And those maps are readily available. They're accessible on the internet. So maybe listeners might like to look that up.
Excellent point, Austin. So building on what you said, then, can you share some insights about Hovione's sustainability journey and your strategy and your goals?
Yeah, I think we're probably not that untypical to people, to lots of people. I think if you look at the sustainability maturity maps that are out there, they're typically kind of 5-step maps. On the one hand, you have probably compliance as a minimum. And on the right-hand side, you probably have, some sort of leadership, societal leadership role. And in between, there's a whole range of companies who are really working at being better at what they do, trying to be more efficient in terms of energy, waste, minimization, all of those type of things. And that's probably the space that we're in. We have been monitoring our sustainability impact for a number of years. We are certified to B Corp as a sustainable company, and we have the sustainability mark, business and sustainability mark here in Ireland also. We have made real progress in certain areas. I think, particularly areas like our use of renewable energy. We've made a lot of changes to our business practices to make life a little bit easier for workers. And we've put a lot of work into developing our corporate social responsibility program. But I think we do recognize that if we really want to be a sustainable company, a truly sustainable company, we cannot just be better at what we do. We have to do better things. And of course, that's the challenge. And we are engaged, this is something that our board has actually given us clear direction on. They want us to get there. And we are engaging a lot at the moment with customers, with suppliers, with other stakeholders, internal and external. And we're trying to map out what that actually looks like in practice. But it's a real challenge. It's not a lack of willingness. It's a real challenge to find out what is the best way of doing this. And I think, if you'd excuse the pun, ultimately this has to be sustainable because, for us to get to where we want to get to, we have to make sure that the business survives it and is trying to find and navigate that path. That's the biggest challenge. So we're working on that, and that's the journey we're on. I think we're probably we're working on a strategy at the moment that we're about to launch, which probably is the next level strategy for us.
Thanks, Austin. A very good point. Look, sustainability is not only about what's good for the planet, it's also about sustainability of a business, because obviously it employs a lot of people in the sector, et cetera, et cetera.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Andrea, bringing you in now. So automatic plastics obviously operate in the plastic sector, which again has seen market increase from approximately $502 billion US in 2016 to $580 billion in 2020, which I'm pretty sure there's some correlation with the pharma market industry growth as well. You could see that. There is a forecast out there that's saying it will increase to $750 billion by 2028. So how can this sector contribute to the sustainability agenda?
Thanks, David. Yeah, we feel that as an injection molder for pharma, medtech and food packaging, it is absolutely critical for us to be driving the sustainability agenda. We're really passionate about what we're doing here at Automatic Plastics to implement improvements. Because we're an SME, those things that we're implementing are quite pragmatic, they're quite practical. So what we kind of work hard on is making sure that the positives of plastics are focused on. So I know that plastics gets a very bad press, and understandably for many of the reasons, but as Austin mentioned, we support pharma companies to put their medicine and creams in their packaging. And what we like to do is work for improvements and sustainability, but still using plastics as a material that has many benefits, for example, for stability for medicines, but also it's lightweighting, it does prevent food wastage. So we're very much focused on avoiding any, what we would maybe call greenwashing, making sure that the things that we're focused on are real savings and real, truly driving our sustainability agenda. We feel that with us ourselves, our sustainability journey definitely starts with procurement, and we're seeing increasingly that the clients that we work with are very much open to those suggestions too. So it's trying to drive that end-to-end improvements. Obviously with plastics, again, obviously recycling plastic is fantastic, but again, when you're in medtech and pharma, using virgin material, using very specific grades of material are often the constraints that you would have. So it's very much focusing on eliminating waste, reducing waste to the minimum possible, optimizing efficiencies in the process, optimizing packaging as to how the product gets delivered to the client. So yeah, there's lots that we're working on, and we see it as very much a core strategy for us.
So you brought up a couple of things about the optimization, and I think design comes into that. So design for end of life and enable recovery, recycle, manufacture are all going to be very key points for this transition. So in relation to APL, obviously sustainability is important. You started your journey since 2016. Can you share some insights on that path to where you are now?
Yeah, so we were always quite good in terms of what we were doing, but it became a more important part of our core strategy. So we formed a green lean team. So we're also on a lean operational excellence journey, but we specifically formed a green lean team with a number of members across the organization. And we got great support, to be fair. So for example, the SEAI came in and did some workshops with us, identifying our significant energy users, going after kind of a list of opportunities. And that was really what started the ball rolling. And now we've kind of, we've managed to, I suppose, drive a lot of positive change. We've our KPI, which is our kilowatt of energy used per kg of plastic converted. It's very transparent, it's very measurable. It's quite a simple metric, but it's what works for us. Everybody in the company is aware of the metric. So the Green Lean team do great awareness around it. We've had things like jumping up on bicycles to try and make energy, to show how hard it is to make energy, but also builds that awareness that, and energy is obviously one example of what the team are working on. But we implemented technical improvements, so that whether that was variable compressors, but also behavioural improvements, making sure machines were switched off, building signage around the organisation, and then reaching out to clients. As you mentioned, we feel that the earlier we can engage with clients around the design of a product, so whether that's a pot, for example, for medicine to go in, or a medical device component, obviously the design is with the client, but we can offer real advice in terms of design for manufacture for sustainability. So number one being making sure that you don't have scrap, that you don't have waste, that the tool is efficient, that the process efficient, but also, for example, light weighting as much as possible. Again, bearing in mind all the constraints that that particular product might have, but working with our clients to get through the possible regulatory approvals needed to change the design, but bringing in that plastics expertise. And also, as Austin mentioned, looking at sourcing in terms of avoiding sourcing abroad of the polymer in South Africa, trying to kind of find and approve a more local source. So yeah, it's very much end to end, and all areas of the business are looked at, and we've had some really good wins, and the Green Lean team have again been operational for a number of years now, and delivering real results, real tangible results. And again, those tangible results go straight to the bottom line, so it really is a win-win, because you're achieving your sustainability goals, but also actually having a positive financial impact for the company.
Thanks, Andrea. Gary, unlike Hovione and Automatic Plastics, Wisetek are not a traditional manufacturing company. You recover IT assets, remanufacture them, and place them back on the marketplace. Can you tell me about this and why this is important?
Yeah, absolutely, David. And thank you for having me. It's really good to hear from the two guys there also on their journeys that they've been on. So from Wisetek's perspective, we're almost at the back end of the process. So, typical manufacturer creates the product and it goes out onto the market. Our position in the market is really to take those devices back, right? We very much focus on IT, right from data center equipment all the way down to your laptops and desktops that we have in front of us today. For us, our number one option is to get that device into a state where we can reuse it, right? So we work with a lot of the leading manufacturers, and ultimate aim is to get that back into their supply chain. So instead of going out buying spare parts or getting net new materials, we're able to refurbish these devices and get them back in. That's the number one, option for us. Best sustainable option that we can go with is to give that a second life and get it reused. If that is not an option, if there's not demand within the supply chain, we'll then move down the remarketing route. So we'll get in all of these devices, we'll fully refurbish them, wipe them of any data sensitive information that is on them, all fully certified, and then we remarket them through different wholesale options to retailers, as well as through our own e-commerce websites like wisetekstore.com. So it is really a niche market, but it is something that is ever evolving, right? Unfortunately, not everything can go down through those first two routes, but then we do have options for responsible recycling, and that is key, right? There is a lot of precious metals within those devices, and we don't have an never-ending supply of these precious metals. We need to be able to focus more on that and recover those and put them back into the manufacturing then of new devices. Just Andrea mentioned, just using plastic as an example, but one of our customers, we're taking plastics off of the hard disk drive, and it's actually being repurposed within new hard disk drives. And just even as a further example, right down to that next level, we have a sustainability team here in Wisetek, and one of the creations that they came up with was there was a plastic that we couldn't get back in through the manufacturing outlet, so now they go into a completely different sector. They go into wheelbarrow wheels. So it really does change, I suppose, the outlook when you get a team involved and come up with new ideas. And just to give you, I suppose, an overview of the challenges that we all face from e-waste as such, right? Today, this year, it's estimated that it's going to be 50 million tons of e-waste produced. And just to put that into perspective, that's the equivalent of 125,000 jumbo jets, right? That is massive, right? And by 2050, it's expected to double. So that really kind of hits home when you put it into that perspective. And then of that e-waste, it actually is 70% of the hazardous waste produced in the world comes from e-waste. So it is really a focus for us all to be able to put more emphasis on this and make sure that we're doing you mentioned where to go, the design. The design is key. If we can design these products in a way that we can repair them easily, reuse them, much more easier, and give them a second, third, fourth life, that is key for us all.
You came up with some interesting stats there, Gary, and I've one in front of me here that the global computer hardware market is growing from 862 billion in 2020 to 944 billion this year. So that's obviously a lot more IT kit coming onto the market. So how can the IT sector make it easier for companies like Wisetek to prolong asset life and recover the CRM, the critical raw materials from these components?
Yeah, so it really is something that is growing year on year, right? So if we look at it, even just go back 5 years ago, it's growing so much. Even the devices that we have, they're newer devices coming onto the market. And back to the first point, we need to be able to reuse those, right? So to be able to prolong the life of the asset, we need the manufacturers to make the devices easier to repair, easier to reuse, and to make it more user friendly. So just to give you an example, most of the devices that we're all on today, the first thing that will start giving trouble with a device where somebody's going to look at and go, do I need a new machine, is the battery life, right? It starts waning down. People go, I'm only getting 30 minutes out of it now, I need a new one. We've all seen it with our phones, with our laptops. If even we do something as simple on that, on all of the devices that are being designed moving forward, that it's easier to replace those batteries, it's going to give people more of an option, and there'll be less demand for brand new, net new products, right? And something that we have is that there is more, I suppose, of an openness to purchase refurbished devices, reused devices. There, I suppose, people are more aware of the whole sustainability challenge that we all have, which is great for our business, right? But they're the key things that we see as benefiting us, benefiting the environment, to prolong the life of those assets.
Thanks, Gary. Okay, so moving on, we're going to talk about sustainability trends and challenges. Andrea, can I come to you first? What are the macro trends likely to have the greatest impact on your company? And as an SME, what are the biggest challenges you will face as you walk your sustainability journey?
Yeah, so I suppose for us, David, in plastics, we know that there's a lot of regulation coming and changes coming, and we welcome that, you know, because we want our parts that we make to not end up in landfill. I mean, one of the things that we really want to be a focus and a trend is around the structures to facilitate recycling, and also kind of clarity, education, consumer messaging. So, you know, something that we work on as an injection molder, for example, is if we're making a pharmaceutical tub, making it clear to the consumer that tub can be recycled at end of use. Because, you know, we feel that there's a high degree of confusion for the end user, being the patient stroke consumer, as to segregation of waste. What, you know, if there's recycled material in the part, can they put it in their recycle bin? And that's just obviously talking about Ireland. So we're really keen that you know, governments get involved to provide that clarity to messaging. We as a supplier in this sector, you know, are definitely doing our bit and focused on our bit, but we do think that you know, that's a kind of a gap that we see. The levels of recycling, you know, in Ireland, that I know the recovery rate for packaging waste is 91%, but the recycling rate is 63%. You know, why is that? Why is there that gap? As I say, we see that there's positives for plastics, we see the negatives too, but if we can keep that in the supply chain, and as Gary said, using, you know, for example, all our plastic waste goes off and has a second life at a different iteration, and encouraging that, you know, making sure that it stays within that circular economy. So I suppose that's the biggest trend that we hope and are optimistic about. In terms of the challenges as an SME, I think they're probably no different to a big organization, but we maybe feel them a little bit more painfully. It's always resourcing. So, you know, we do have our Green Lean team, which is fantastic, and those guys do an amazing job. But both financially and in terms of people's time, it can be hard to find the time to do this good stuff. So what we've had to do is make it part of our kind of every day, make it part of everybody's job. That Green Lean team are, you know, an interdisciplinary team across all the areas of our business. But it's making sure that these are seen as a priority. So the senior management team, like myself and Al, driving that as a major focus for us. And then in terms of, you know, financially, as an SME, we don't have huge budgets to be able to go and, you know, build a wind farm on our land, or, you know, the type of things that might be nice to do. So every project has to stand on its own 2 feet, and there's obviously always demands for investments. So it can be hard to make those resources stretch and make sure that the sustainability goals that we have and those you know, targets and opportunities that we've identified are invested in for the long-term good of the business, but also the long-term good of the planet. Thanks,
Andrea. Gary, just back to you on the challenges your industry will face going forward.
Yeah, so one of the biggest challenges that we see is that we're still in an undefined market, right? It is, I suppose, a niche market that we're in with regards to the e-waste recycling, you know, refurbishment and reuse. The biggest challenge that we have is that there's a lot of, I suppose, organizations looking to get into this business. They see it as an opportunity, but the challenge there is that people don't realize that the barriers to entry into this market around certification and doing the right thing is something that we see as a major challenge, because there's a lot of behavior happening where IT asset devices are getting collected and they're being sent for recycling. But in the background, they're being sent for recycling in containers to, I suppose, countries where they're breaking it down by hand, they're melting the cables, etc., to get the precious metals out of it. So the biggest piece for us is that the legislation and the certifications around that, to ensure that companies who are doing the right thing are getting that credit, and to ensure that anybody trying to get into that market, that there is a barrier of entry there, make sure they're not doing the wrong thing. I think there's plenty of opportunity for organizations to play its part in this space. But the biggest challenge is that there's people coming on and offering better deals and not actually taking the cost of having to do this business, right?
Thanks, Gary. So Austin, just bringing you back in here, what macro trends are going to have the greatest impact on the pharmaceutical sector?
I think climate change and carbon footprint are huge issues of immediate concern. I saw a recent TED talk with economist Rebecca Henderson, and she made a statement that business is screwed unless we fix climate change. And I think I kind of agree with that. The World Business Council for Sustainable Development has laid out a kind of transformational roadmap for business, which I really it's a high level roadmap, but it really means that we need to look at the way that business and the contribution of business to society, how that's evaluated, needs to change. I think we've all heard of the triple bottom line, and a lot of companies and financial accounting bodies are looking at how we put a value on the cost of carbon, the societal benefit of work, the cost of emissions, etc. And I think that's a trend that's going to continue. Some companies, I'm aware of some companies who have appointed chief sustainable or value officers, chief value officers rather than chief financial officers. And I think this trend of trying to put an economic value on sustainability is really the key trend that's going to change the way things work. Because, to Andrea's point, businesses' traditional model of looking at the economics of the basic profit loss accounting, that's not going to get us to where we need to be. So we need to have some other model for putting a value on sustainability. And ultimately, that'll lead to the integration of sustainability into the way we do things on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's the way we see business going down the road.
Thanks, Austin. That's very interesting, actually. Just to sum up, obviously, we could talk here for way longer. If you were to give one takeaway to the people from this session, what would that be?
For me, I think it's the absolute urgency of all of this. I mean, I think a business that isn't engaging in sustainability needs to start that process. I think there's an urgency about this. I think there's an advocacy happening now in society that's going to drive governments maybe to make the changes that will ultimately lead to societal changes. And so I think the sooner businesses engage in this, the better. And I know Andrea mentioned earlier, I would have some concerns about greenwashing. I think we all know it does exist, and it doesn't help. So I think we need meaningful change, and by no means is it easy, but it's not going to get any easier. So the sooner we get engaged in it and involved, the better.
Gary, your one takeaway from the session?
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose very, very quick one would be from within your own organization. Make sure you have a clear IT asset disposition program in place and to manage your e-waste. And then, with regards to having a sustainability team, that's something that is key right from the design of the new product and also what is happening, from every single point that we touched on here. You can get value back within your organization while also helping the environment.
Thanks, Gary. And finally, Andrea, your one takeaway?
Just do it. Yeah, I think just get started, and it's like a snowball. You start rolling it, and you'd be surprised the traction you'll get. And it is hard. Austin is right, but it's worth it. And yeah, just get started and reach out to people to ask for help.
Thanks, Andrea. Okay, so guys, look, obviously we could talk for another half an hour here, but that brings us to the end of our session. So I want to thank Andrea, Austin, and Gary for joining me and providing their insights as their companies walk their sustainability journey. And if you're interested in understanding how IMR can help you on your journey, drop into our virtual booth or contact us on Sustainable Manufacturing at IMR. Have a good day all, and goodbye.
Thanks
Thanks,
very much.
David.
All the best, guys. Bye bye.